The storm raged outside, matching the turmoil in Elena Voss's heart. Rain pounded against the windows of the Imperial Grand Hotel, turning the city into a blurred mess of lights and shadows. Elena, a talented interior designer in her late 20s, stood in the hallway, drenched despite her futile attempt to shield herself with an umbrella that had flipped inside out blocks away. Her fingers trembled as she fumbled with the keycard, her mind replaying the disastrous evening. Everything had gone wrong. The celebration dinner to honor her latest project had turned into a nightmare. Her business partner, whom she had trusted implicitly, had betrayed her. Contracts vanished, funds siphoned off with forged signatures, and her reputation in the design world tarnished by whispers of scandal. Years of hard work, late nights sketching blueprints, and sourcing materials crumble like a poorly built foundation. Tears stung her eyes as the door finally clicked open, warm air rushing out to greet her like a forgotten embrace. She stepped inside, expecting the modest room she had booked on her dwindling budget. Instead, she found herself in a lavish suite. A fireplace crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on cream-colored walls. Rose petals scattered across the hardwood floor led to a partially open bedroom door. Two crystal flutes are waiting beside a bottle of champagne chilled in a silver bucket. This was not her room. Exhaustion clouded her thoughts. She should leave and explain the mix-up at the front desk. But her legs refused to move further. The sofa by the fire looked so inviting. Just a moment to rest, she told herself, collapsing onto it as sobs racked her body. She cried for the dreams shattered, the trust broken, the future uncertain. In that stolen sanctuary, her carefully constructed facade crumbled. Then, a voice cut through the haze. "I thought you had changed your mind." Elena's head snapped up, heart pounding. A man stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. He stepped into the firelight, revealing a strikingly handsome face with sharp angles, intense blue eyes, and dark hair tousled as if he had run his hands through it in frustration. His shirt was open at the collar, sleeves rolled up, exuding restrained power. "I am sorry," Elena stammered, wiping her tears. "The keycard worked, I did not realize." He studied her, his expression shifting from confusion to something softer. "You are crying," he observed, moving closer but keeping a respectful distance. "Whatever brought you here must be heavy." His voice was deep, laced with his own unspoken pain. Perhaps it was the anonymity, or the kindness in his tone, but Elena found herself pouring out her story. The betrayal, the stolen contracts, the ruined reputation. He listened intently, pouring champagne and sitting across from her. He shared his own tale. He said, "I set this up for someone who decided we were over," gesturing to the romantic setup. His voice cracked with resignation. They talked through the night, two strangers finding solace in shared vulnerability. Marcus Kane was a self-made millionaire CEO of a vast real estate empire. He spoke of building his company from nothing, the loneliness at the top, the failed relationship with a woman who valued his status more than his heart. Elena opened up about her passion for design, creating spaces that felt like home, yet never finding her own. The connection deepened. Laughter mingled with tears as they recounted childhood stories. Marcus's mother had raised him alone in poverty, teaching him resilience. Elena's father had abandoned her family, leaving scars of distrust. The attraction built slowly, then ignited. When he reached for her hand, electricity sparked. Their kiss started gently, then became urgent, releasing pent-up emotions. "Stay," he whispered against her lips. "I was waiting for you." Though meant for another, the words felt destined for her. They made love by the firelight, exploring each other with tenderness and passion. For one night, pain faded, replaced by connection. As dawn broke, Elena dressed quietly, watching him sleep. She slipped out, fearing reality would shatter the illusion. She did not know that she carried more than memories. The seeds of a new life had been planted. 3 months later, Elena sat in a clinic bathroom, staring at 3 positive pregnancy tests. Triplets. The word echoed like a thunderclap. Her hands pressed against her flat stomach, mind racing. That night with Marcus, a stranger whose last name she never learned, had created this miracle or disaster. She had searched for him, returning to the hotel, but privacy policies blocked her. With only a first name, the city swallowed any leads. Her background fueled her fears. Growing up poor, watching her mother struggle after her father's abandonment, Elena vowed never to depend on a man. But these babies were part of her and inexplicably part of him. She chose to keep them, moving to a modest neighborhood with affordable rents. The ultrasound confirmed triplets, 3 heartbeats flickering on the screen. "Congratulations," the technician said. Elena's tears were joy mixed with terror. How would she manage alone? She packed her life into boxes, leaving her old apartment behind. The new place was small, but the community welcomed her. Neighbors like Ruby, an elderly widow who had raised kids solo, offered advice and meals. Elena took freelance design jobs, transforming cramped apartments into functional homes for families on tight budgets. A grandmother raising grandchildren, a veteran seeking peace, immigrants building new lives. These projects fed her soul more than high-end contracts ever had. As her belly swelled, the community rallied. Ruby became her confidant, sharing stories of survival. "Those babies are blessings," Ruby said one evening on the balcony Elena had beautified with plants and thrift finds. "They will teach you love in ways you never knew." Elena felt the kicks, 3 lives asserting themselves. She thought of Marcus often, wondering if he remembered her, hoping he had found peace. Labor came suddenly, a storm of pain. Ruby drove her to the hospital, holding her hand through contractions. The babies arrived, Ethan with his father's intense blue eyes, Sophia with a radiant smile, and Isabella with quiet wisdom. Elena named them Kane, honoring the man who had given her this gift, even unknowingly. Holding them, she knew every hardship was worth it. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus woke in his empty penthouse, haunted by Elena. He had hired investigators and scoured records, but leads dried up. His empire grew, but success felt hollow. Dates with socialites left him cold. None matched the raw honesty of that night. Victoria, his ex, tried to rekindle things, but he rebuffed her, sensing her ulterior motives. 5 years passed. Elena's children thrived in their tight-knit world. Ethan was protective, Sophia joyful, and Isabella observant. Elena told them of their father. "A kind man, fate separated him from us." The neighborhood became family, celebrating birthdays at the community center. Elena led efforts to preserve their homes against encroaching development. Unbeknownst to her, that development was Marcus's project. Fate was aligning their paths again, setting the stage for a collision. As Elena fought for her community, she would face the man who fathered her children, unaware of the storm brewing. The door she entered wrongly had opened a destiny neither could escape. 3 months had passed since that fateful night at the Imperial Grand Hotel, but the memory lingered like a vivid dream in Elena Voss's mind. She sat in the stark white bathroom of the local clinic, her hands trembling as she stared at the 3 pregnancy tests lined up on the sink. Each displayed 2 bold pink lines, undeniable proof of a life-changing reality. Triplets. The word reverberated through her thoughts, a mix of wonder and terror. How could one impulsive night with a stranger lead to this? Marcus, the man with those piercing blue eyes and gentle touch, whose full name she never learned. She had entered his room by mistake, seeking shelter from the storm outside and within, only to leave with something far more profound. Elena's background haunted her in that moment. Growing up in a fractured home, she had watched her mother struggle after her father abandoned them for a wealthier life. Their constant companion was poverty, teaching Elena early lessons in self-reliance and distrust. Men like her father, or perhaps like Marcus with his evident success, could wield power that crushed the vulnerable. Yet, as she pressed her palms against her still flat abdomen, a fierce protectiveness surged within her. These babies were hers, a part of her resilience. She would not terminate the pregnancy. Instead, she resolved to face the challenges head-on, drawing from the strength her mother had instilled in her. Determined to find Marcus, Elena returned to the hotel the next day. The front desk staff were polite but firm, citing strict privacy policies preventing guest information sharing without a court order. She had no last name, no room number beyond a hazy recollection of the floor. Steve was a common name in a city of millions. Searches on social media and public records yielded nothing useful. She even considered hiring a private investigator, but her finances, already strained from the business betrayal, made it impossible. She resigned, but she focused on her health and future. The pregnancy was grueling. Morning sickness hit hard, compounded by the demands of carrying triplets. Doctor visits revealed high risks, potential preterm labor, nutritional deficiencies, and the need for bed rest in later months. Elena adapted her freelance design work, taking on smaller projects she could manage from home. She redesigned a neighbor's tiny kitchen to maximize space for a growing family, earning just enough to cover bills. Fatigue became her shadow, but so did a budding excitement. Ultrasounds showed 3 tiny heartbeats, each pulsing with life. The technicians' warm congratulations brought tears. Elena envisioned their faces, wondering if they would inherit Marcus's intensity or her creativity. To prepare, she moved to a working-class neighborhood on the city's outskirts, where rents were low and community bonds strong. Her new apartment was cramped, with peeling paint and outdated fixtures, but it was affordable. She spent evenings unpacking, transforming the space with thrift store finds and her design skills. Soft curtains to filter sunlight, multifunctional furniture to save room. Neighbors noticed her efforts. Ruby, the older woman next door, knocked with a homemade casserole one afternoon. "I raised 3 kids alone after my husband passed," Ruby said, her face etched with lines of hard-won wisdom. "You'll need all the help you can get." Ruby's story resonated. Widowed young, she had juggled jobs while fostering a tight-knit support system. She introduced Elena to the local community center, where mothers shared resources and advice. Elena attended prenatal classes there, learning about nutrition, labor, and single parenting. Doubts crept in during quiet nights. Financial strain loomed, medical bills mounting, and her savings dwindling. She applied for government assistance programs, navigating bureaucracy that tested her patience. Yet the community's warmth eased her isolation. A young mother down the hall offered hand-me-down maternity clothes. An immigrant family shared recipes for nourishing meals on a budget. As her belly grew, so did her resolve. She confided in Ruby about the father, describing Marcus as a kind stranger encountered during a low point. Ruby listened without judgment. "Sometimes life throws curves, but those babies will be your anchor." Elena felt the first kicks, 3 distinct movements like a secret code. She imagined telling Marcus one day, picturing his reaction: shock, perhaps joy, or rejection. Fear of the latter kept her silent. Better to build her life independently than risk upheaval. Labor arrived abruptly one stormy evening, mirroring the night it all began. Contractions gripped her as Ruby rushed her to the hospital. Hours of pain blurred into a haze, but Elena's determination prevailed. The babies emerged one by one. Ethan first, with cries that filled the room and eyes already hinting at deep blue. Sophia next, her tiny smile lighting up the exhausted faces around her. Isabella last, quiet and watchful even in infancy. Holding them, swaddled in hospital blankets, Elena wept with overwhelming love. They were perfect, worth every sacrifice. Recovery was tough. Sleepless nights, rotated feedings, changings, and soothing. Finances stretched thin. Elena balanced motherhood with sporadic design gigs, consulting via video calls while babies napped. Community support proved invaluable. Ruby babysat during appointments, and neighbors dropped off meals. Elena named them Kane, a nod to the man who unknowingly fathered them, embedding his legacy in their identities. She vowed to raise them with honesty, sharing age-appropriate stories of their origins without bitterness. Across the city, Marcus Kane expanded his real estate empire, closing deals that shaped skylines. Yet success rang hollow. He dated sporadically, but no woman sparked the connection he felt with Elena. Investigators hit dead ends. Without more details, she remained a ghost. Victoria, his ex-fiancée, resurfaced at industry events, her smiles calculated. She had cheated on him with a business rival, shattering his trust. Marcus kept her at arm's length, sensing her interest in his wealth rather than him. Nights alone, he replayed their encounter, wondering if fate had played a cruel joke. In her modest home, Elena watched her triplets grow. Ethan showed early protectiveness, guarding his sisters during play. Sophia's laughter was infectious, brightening dreary days. Isabella observed quietly, her insights surprising for a toddler. Elena's design business picked up through word of mouth. A veteran hired her to create a serene bedroom, praising her empathy. Pride swelled as she provided for them, but loneliness crept in. She dated rarely, prioritizing stability over romance. 5 years later, the children started school and their personalities bloomed. Ethan asked probing questions about their father. Elena answered truthfully, describing a good man separated by circumstance. The neighborhood faced threats from urban development, rumors of luxury condos displacing homes. Elena joined resistance efforts, unaware that the project bore Marcus's company name. Fate wove its threads tighter, preparing for reunion. The secret born that night would soon demand revelation, testing bonds forged in storm and silence. 2. The secret born. 3 months had passed since that fateful night at the Imperial Grand Hotel, but the memory lingered like a vivid dream in Elena Voss's mind. She sat in the stark white bathroom of the local clinic, her hands trembling as she stared at the 3 pregnancy tests lined up on the sink. Each displayed 2 bold pink lines, undeniable proof of a life-changing reality. Triplets. The word reverberated through her thoughts, a mix of wonder and terror. How could one impulsive night with a stranger lead to this? Marcus, the man with those piercing blue eyes and gentle touch, whose full name she never learned. She had entered his room by mistake, seeking shelter from the storm outside and within, only to leave with something far more profound. Elena's background haunted her in that moment. Growing up in a fractured home, she had watched her mother struggle after her father abandoned them for a wealthier life. Their constant companion was poverty, teaching Elena early lessons in self-reliance and distrust. Men like her father, or perhaps like Marcus with his evident success, could wield power that crushed the vulnerable. Yet, as she pressed her palms against her still flat abdomen, a fierce protectiveness surged within her. These babies were hers, a part of her resilience. She would not terminate the pregnancy. Instead, she resolved to face the challenges head-on, drawing from the strength her mother had instilled in her. Determined to find Marcus, Elena returned to the hotel the next day. The front desk staff were polite but firm, citing strict privacy policies preventing guest information sharing without a court order. She had no last name, no room number beyond a hazy recollection of the floor. Steve was a common name in a city of millions. Searches on social media and public records yielded nothing useful. She even considered hiring a private investigator, but her finances, already strained from the business betrayal, made it impossible. She resigned, but she focused on her health and future. The pregnancy was grueling. Morning sickness hit hard, compounded by the demands of carrying triplets. Doctor visits revealed high risks, potential preterm labor, nutritional deficiencies, and the need for bed rest in later months. Elena adapted her freelance design work, taking on smaller projects she could manage from home. She redesigned a neighbor's tiny kitchen to maximize space for a growing family, earning just enough to cover bills. Fatigue became her shadow, but so did a budding excitement. Ultrasounds showed 3 tiny heartbeats, each pulsing with life. The technicians' warm congratulations brought tears. Elena envisioned their faces, wondering if they would inherit Marcus's intensity or her creativity. To prepare, she moved to a working-class neighborhood on the city's outskirts, where rents were low and community bonds strong. Her new apartment was cramped, with peeling paint and outdated fixtures, but it was affordable. She spent evenings unpacking, transforming the space with thrift store finds and her design skills. Soft curtains to filter sunlight, multifunctional furniture to save room. Neighbors noticed her efforts. Ruby, the older woman next door, knocked with a homemade casserole one afternoon. "I raised 3 kids alone after my husband passed," Ruby said, her face etched with lines of hard-won wisdom. "You'll need all the help you can get." Ruby's story resonated. Widowed young, she had juggled jobs while fostering a tight-knit support system. She introduced Elena to the local community center, where mothers shared resources and advice. Elena attended prenatal classes there, learning about nutrition, labor, and single parenting. Doubts crept in during quiet nights. Financial strain loomed, medical bills mounting, and her savings dwindling. She applied for government assistance programs, navigating bureaucracy that tested her patience. Yet, the community's warmth eased her isolation. A young mother down the hall offered hand-me-down maternity clothes. An immigrant family shared recipes for nourishing meals on a budget. As her belly grew, so did her resolve. She confided in Ruby about the father, describing Marcus as a kind stranger encountered during a low point. Ruby listened without judgment. Sometimes life throws curves, but those babies will be your anchor. Elena felt the first kicks, 3 distinct movements, like a secret code. She imagined telling Marcus one day, picturing his reaction: shock, perhaps joy, or rejection. Fear of the latter kept her silent. Better to build her life independently than risk upheaval. Labor arrived abruptly one stormy evening, mirroring the night it all began. Contractions gripped her as Ruby rushed her to the hospital. Hours of pain blurred into a haze, but Elena's determination prevailed. The babies emerged one by one, Ethan first, with cries that filled the room and eyes already hinting at deep blue. Sophia next, her tiny smile lighting up the exhausted faces around her. Isabella last, quiet and watchful even in infancy. Holding them, swaddled in hospital blankets, Elena wept with overwhelming love. They were perfect, worth every sacrifice. Recovery was tough. Sleepless nights, rotated feedings, changings, and soothing. Finances stretched thin. Elena balanced motherhood with sporadic design gigs, consulting via video calls while babies napped. Community support proved invaluable. Ruby babysat during appointments, and neighbors dropped off meals. Elena named them Kane, a nod to the man who unknowingly fathered them, embedding his legacy in their identities. She vowed to raise them with honesty, sharing age-appropriate stories of their origins without bitterness. Across the city, Marcus Kane expanded his real estate empire, closing deals that shaped skylines. Yet success rang hollow. He dated sporadically, but no woman sparked the connection he felt with Elena. Investigators hit dead ends. Without more details, she remained a ghost. Victoria, his ex-fiancée, resurfaced at industry events, her smiles calculated. She had cheated on him with a business rival, shattering his trust. Marcus kept her at arm's length, sensing her interest in his wealth rather than him. Nights alone he replayed their encounter, wondering if fate had played a cruel joke. In her modest home, Elena watched her triplets grow. Ethan showed early protectiveness, guarding his sisters during play. Sophia's laughter was infectious, brightening dreary days. Isabella observed quietly, her insights surprising for a toddler. Elena's design business picked up through word of mouth. A veteran hired her to create a serene bedroom, praising her empathy. Pride swelled as she provided for them. But loneliness crept in. She dated rarely, prioritizing stability over romance. 5 years later, the children started school, and their personalities bloomed. Ethan asked probing questions about their father. Elena answered truthfully, describing a good man separated by circumstance. The neighborhood faced threats from urban development, rumors of luxury condos displacing homes. Elena joined resistance efforts, unaware that the project bore Marcus's company name. Fate wove its threads tighter, preparing for reunion. The secret born that night would soon demand revelation, testing bonds forged in storm and silence. 5 years had carved profound changes into Elena Voss's life. The cramped apartment in the working-class neighborhood had become a home, its walls adorned with her children's drawings and shelves lined with second-hand books. Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella, now 5, filled the space with laughter and chaos. Elena had rebuilt her career on modest design projects, transforming tiny apartments into sanctuaries for families like hers. Her reputation grew not through glossy magazines, but through grateful word of mouth in a community that valued her empathy. Yet, beneath her strength, the weight of single motherhood pressed hard. Bills stacked up, sleep was scarce, and the memory of Marcus Kane lingered like a shadow she could neither embrace nor banish. The neighborhood, A patchwork of resilience was her anchor. Ruby, the widowed matriarch next door, had become a surrogate mother, her porch a haven for late-night talks. Other neighbors, from young mothers juggling jobs to elderly immigrants sharing stories of survival, wove a safety net around Elena. They celebrated the triplets' milestones, first steps, first words, with communal joy at the community center, where potlucks and birthday parties blurred lines between neighbors and family. Elena taught the children about their father carefully, describing Marcus as a kind man separated by fate, his last name a gift to their identity. Ethan's blue eyes, Sophia's radiant smile, and Isabella's quiet wisdom mirrored him, though they knew him only through stories. Financial strain was a constant battle. Elena juggled freelance gigs, often working late after bedtime, sketching layouts by lamplight. She applied for subsidies to cover daycare, navigating red tape with gritted teeth. Her old life in high-end design felt distant. Clients who once courted her now shunned her, tainted by the scandal her former partner had orchestrated. Yet, her new work, designing functional beauty for those who could not afford luxury, fed her soul. A grandmother thanked her with tears for making a small apartment feel like home for her grandchildren. A veteran praised a mural she painted, saying it brought him peace. These moments reminded Elena that she was more than her losses. The community faced a new threat, rumors of a redevelopment project that would raise affordable housing for luxury condos. Elena attended meetings at the community center, where residents voiced fears of displacement. Families who had lived there for generations, elderly couples with nowhere to go, children who thrived in familiar schools, all were at risk. With her design background, Elena emerged as a leader, proposing hybrid plans that balanced growth with preservation. Her passion galvanized the room, and neighbors rallied behind her, unaware the project belonged to Kane Enterprises, led by the man who fathered her children. Across the city, Marcus Kane sat in his sleek office, overseeing an empire built from his childhood poverty. His rise from nothing to real estate titan was a testament to relentless ambition. But success left him hollow. He dated, occasionally, women polished and poised. Yet none stirred the connection he felt with Elena. Her memory haunted him, her vulnerability, her laughter, how she saw through his guarded exterior. He had hired investigators repeatedly, chasing leads that dead-ended with her first name and a vague description. The hotel refused to share records, and social media offered no clues. Victoria, his ex-fiancée, lingered on the edges of his world, attending galas with calculated smiles. Marcus rebuffed her, remembering her betrayal with a rival that had cost him both love and trust. His latest project, redeveloping a low-income neighborhood, promised record profits. Marcus saw it as progress, a chance to modernize an aging area. He ignored reports of community resistance, delegating negotiations to his team. But when a video of a passionate advocate surfaced, a woman with fierce conviction arguing for affordable housing, his world tilted. It was Elena, older, her face etched with resilience, but unmistakably her. Those eyes, that voice, the fire he had glimpsed 5 years ago. He watched the clip repeatedly, heart pounding, and demanded a meeting with her, overriding his team's warnings about engaging activists directly. The meeting was set in a sterile conference room, a stark contrast to the warmth of their first encounter. Elena arrived prepared and armed with data and proposals, focusing on saving her neighborhood. She stepped through the door and froze. Marcus Kane, CEO of Kane Enterprises, stood before her, the man from the hotel. His blue eyes locked onto hers, shock mirroring her own. "You," he said, voice rough with 5 years of unanswered questions. Elena's breath caught, her presentation slides forgotten. The room seemed to shrink, charged with unspoken history. They argued about the project, Elena accusing him of erasing communities for profit, Marcus defending his vision of progress. Their words were sharp, but their eyes betrayed deeper currents: attraction, regret, curiosity. Elena's heart raced. She wanted to tell him about Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella, but fear stopped her. His wealth and power loomed like a threat. What if he fought for custody? Her father's abandonment, choosing wealth over family, fueled her silence. She could not risk losing her children to a man who might wield his resources against her. Marcus, meanwhile, was unraveling. Finding Elena after years of searching felt like fate, yet her resistance to his project and refusal to acknowledge their past stung. He pushed back, citing economic benefits, but her arguments about community and legacy forced him to listen. He saw her as an opponent and the woman who had shared his pain. Determined to understand her, he began attending community meetings, not as a CEO, but as a man seeking connection. He listened to residents, their stories of struggle echoing his own childhood. Elena noticed his presence and awkward attempts to engage, and she felt a pull she had to fight to ignore. Ruby saw it first. "That man is trying to prove something," she said one evening, watching Marcus help paint a community center wall. Elena scoffed, insisting he was manipulating her. But doubt crept in. His project plans shifted, incorporating her ideas for affordable housing. He worked alongside neighbors, sleeves rolled up, sweat on his brow, far from the polished tycoon. One night, alone at the community center reviewing plans, their hands brushed over blueprints. The air crackled. Marcus leaned in, and Elena, despite herself, met him halfway. Their kiss was a collision of past and present, reigniting what had never entirely faded. Elena pulled away, heart-pounding. She fled, the secret of their children heavier than ever. Marcus stood alone, resolve hardening. He would win her trust, not just for the project, but for the connection he still felt. Unbeknownst to them, Victoria watched from afar, her interest piqued by Marcus's obsession. The stage was set for a collision. Elena's secret, Marcus's pursuit, and a community caught in the balance. Fate had reunited them, but the truth threatened to tear them apart. Marcus Kane sat in his penthouse office, the city sprawling beneath him like a glittering map of his achievements. At 35, he had built Kane Enterprises from nothing, transforming his childhood poverty into a real estate empire that reshaped skylines. Skyscrapers bore his name, deals closed with his signature, yet the victory felt hollow. 5 years ago, a single night with Elena Voss had cracked his carefully constructed world. Her laughter, her vulnerability, the way she saw past his wealth to the man beneath, it haunted him. He had searched for her relentlessly, hiring private investigators, scouring hotel records, chasing dead ends, a first name, a fleeting description, nothing more. The Imperial Grand Hotel's strict privacy policies blocked his efforts, and social media yielded no trace. Elena was a ghost, and Marcus was left with an ache no amount of success could fill. His life was a performance of power. Boardrooms buzzed with his decisions, charity galas showcased his polished presence, but solitude gnawed at him. He dated sporadically, models, heiresses, women who moved in his world, but none sparked his raw connection with Elena. Their conversations were shallow, their interest often tied to his wealth. Victoria, his ex-fiancée, lingered on the fringes of his social circle, her calculated smiles a reminder of her betrayal. She had cheated with a rival developer, costing Marcus a significant deal and his trust in love. He kept her at a distance, sensing her desire to reclaim a place in his life for status, not affection. Nights alone, he replayed that hotel night, wondering if fate had mocked him with a fleeting glimpse of something real. His latest project, a redevelopment plan for a low-income neighborhood, promised record profits. Marcus saw it as progress, replacing aging buildings with modern complexes, boosting the city's economy. His team handled community pushback, dismissing it as routine. But when a report about a fierce advocate leading the resistance crossed his desk, he clicked the attached video. Elena's face filled the screen, older but unmistakable, her voice steady as she argued for preserving affordable housing. His heart stopped. 5 years of searching, and there she was, fighting his company. He canceled meetings, demanding every detail about her. Elena Voss is an interior designer, single mother, and community leader. The revelation that she lived in the neighborhood he planned to redevelop felt like fate's cruel twist. Marcus insisted on attending the next community meeting, ignoring his team's warnings about optics. He entered the community center, a modest space alive with voices. Residents shared stories of homes built over decades and fears of displacement. Elena stood at the front, presenting a hybrid development model that balanced growth with community preservation. Her passion commanded the room, her arguments rooted in data and empathy. Marcus watched, captivated, seeing the woman who had shared his pain now fighting for others. He approached her afterward, his CEO facade slipping. "Elena," he said softly. Her eyes widened, recognition hitting like a shockwave. "You," she whispered, stepping back. The air between them crackled with unresolved history. Their conversation turned heated. Elena accused him of prioritizing profit over people. Her words were sharp and convincing. Marcus defended his vision, insisting the project would bring jobs and infrastructure. But her challenge, "What about the families who lose their homes?" echoed his own childhood, when evictions had uprooted his family. He deflected, but her presence unraveled him. "Why did you leave?" he wanted to ask, but her guarded stance stopped him. Elena, meanwhile, wrestled with her secret. Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella, her triplets, bore Marcus's eyes, his smile. Telling him risked everything. His wealth could fuel a custody battle she couldn't afford. Her father's abandonment, choosing a richer life over family, loomed large. She held her silence, fear outweighing the pull of their past. Marcus refused to let her slip away again. He began attending community events, not as a corporate figure, but as a man seeking understanding. He listened to elderly residents, helped repair a playground, and took notes on their concerns. His team grumbled. Affordable housing cut profits. But Marcus pushed back, incorporating Elena's ideas into revised plans. He wasn't just trying to win the project's approval, he wanted her respect, her trust. Elena noticed his efforts, and her resolve wavered. At a neighborhood cleanup, he worked beside her, sleeves rolled up, dirt smudging his tailored shirt. Their hands brushed passing tools, and the spark was undeniable. "You're different here," she said, almost to herself. "I'm trying to be," he replied, his gaze holding hers. Ruby, Elena's neighbor, saw the shift. "He's not just a suit," she told Elena one evening on her balcony, where plants thrived in recycled pots. "He's showing up for you." Elena dismissed it, citing his power as a threat. But doubt crept in. Marcus's actions, funding a community scholarship, hiring local contractors, felt genuine. One night, reviewing blueprints at the community center, they stood close, the scent of his cologne pulling her back to that hotel room. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice low. "Because you make me want to be better," he said. Their kiss was inevitable, a collision of longing and memory, but Elena pulled away, panic rising. Her secret felt heavier with every touch. Across town, Victoria watched from the shadows. She had seen Marcus at a gala, his distraction evident when Elena's name surfaced. A private investigator she hired confirmed his obsession, uncovering Elena's role in the resistance. Victoria, calculating and ambitious, saw opportunity. Marcus's wealth and status were prizes she had lost once. She wouldn't let a community activist steal them again. She began plotting, attending his events, and offering sympathy about the project's delays. Marcus, focused on Elena, barely noticed her renewed presence, but Victoria's patience was strategic. Elena lay awake that night, the kiss replaying in her mind. She wanted to tell Marcus about their children and share the joy and burden of Ethan's protectiveness, Sophia's laughter, and Isabella's wisdom, but fear of his reaction, anger, rejection, or a legal fight, kept her silent. She had seen how wealth tilted justice. Her mother's struggles after her father left taught her that. Marcus, in his penthouse, stared at the city, resolve hardening. He would prove himself to Elena as a CEO and as the man who had held her through the dark. Neither knew their worlds were about to collide, with secrets and schemes threatening to unravel everything. The empire Marcus built felt empty without her, but fate drew them closer, toward a truth that could bind or break them. 4. Empire of Emptiness. Marcus Kane sat in his penthouse office, the city sprawling beneath him like a glittering map of his achievements. At 35, he had built Kane Enterprises from nothing, transforming his childhood poverty into a real estate empire that reshaped skylines. Skyscrapers bore his name, Deals closed with his signature, yet the victory felt hollow. 5 years ago, a single night with Elena Voss had cracked his carefully constructed world. Her laughter, her vulnerability, the way she saw past his wealth to the man beneath, it haunted him. He had searched for her relentlessly, hiring private investigators, scouring hotel records, chasing dead ends. A first name, a fleeting description, nothing more. The Imperial Grand Hotel's strict privacy policies blocked his efforts, and social media yielded no trace. Elena was a ghost, and Marcus was left with an ache no amount of success could fill. His life was a performance of power. Boardrooms buzzed with his decisions. Charity galas showcased his polished presence, but solitude gnawed at him. He dated sporadically, models, heiresses, women who moved in his world, but none sparked his raw connection with Elena. Their conversations were shallow, their interest often tied to his wealth. Victoria, his ex-fiancée, lingered on the fringes of his social circle, her calculated smiles a reminder of her betrayal. She had cheated with a rival developer, costing Marcus a significant deal and his trust in love. He kept her at a distance, sensing her desire to reclaim a place in his life for status, not affection. Nights alone, he replayed that hotel night, wondering if fate had mocked him with a fleeting glimpse of something real. His latest project, a redevelopment plan for a low-income neighborhood, promised record profits. Marcus saw it as progress, replacing aging buildings with modern complexes, boosting the city's economy. His team handled community pushback, dismissing it as routine. But when a report about a fierce advocate leading the resistance crossed his desk, he clicked the attached video. Elena's face filled the screen, older but unmistakable, her voice steady as she argued for preserving affordable housing. His heart stopped. 5 years of searching, and there she was, fighting his company. He canceled meetings, demanding every detail about her. Elena Voss is an interior designer, single mother, and community leader. The revelation that she lived in the neighborhood he planned to redevelop felt like fate's cruel twist. Marcus insisted on attending the next community meeting, ignoring his team's warnings about optics. He entered the community center, a modest space alive with voices. Residents shared stories of homes built over decades and fears of displacement. Elena stood at the front, presenting a hybrid development model that balanced growth with community preservation. Her passion commanded the room, her arguments rooted in data and empathy. Marcus watched, captivated, seeing the woman who had shared his pain now fighting for others. He approached her afterward, his CEO facade slipping. "Elena," he said softly. Her eyes widened, recognition hitting like a shockwave. "You," she whispered, stepping back. The air between them crackled with unresolved history. Their conversation turned heated. Elena accused him of prioritizing profit over people. Her words were sharp and convincing. Marcus defended his vision, insisting the project would bring jobs and infrastructure. But her challenge, what about the families who lose their homes, echoed his own childhood, when evictions had uprooted his family. He deflected, but her presence unraveled him. "Why did you leave?" he wanted to ask, but her guarded stance stopped him. Elena, meanwhile, wrestled with her secret. Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella, her triplets, bore Marcus's eyes, his smile. Telling him risked everything. His wealth could fuel a custody battle she couldn't afford. Her father's abandonment, choosing a richer life over family, loomed large. She held her silence, fear outweighing the pull of their past. Marcus refused to let her slip away again. He began attending community events, not as a corporate figure, but as a man seeking understanding. He listened to elderly residents, helped repair a playground, and took notes on their concerns. His team grumbled. Affordable housing cut profits. But Marcus pushed back, incorporating Elena's ideas into revised plans. He wasn't just trying to win the project's approval, he wanted her respect, her trust. Elena noticed his efforts, and her resolve wavered. At a neighborhood cleanup, he worked beside her, sleeves rolled up, dirt smudging his tailored shirt. Their hands brushed passing tools, and the spark was undeniable. "You're different here," she said, almost to herself. "I'm trying to be," he replied, his gaze holding hers. Ruby, Elena's neighbor, saw the shift. He's not just a suit, she told Elena one evening on her balcony, where plants thrived in recycled pots. He's showing up for you. Elena dismissed it, citing his power as a threat. But doubt crept in. Marcus's actions, funding a community scholarship, hiring local contractors, felt genuine. One night, reviewing blueprints at the community center, they stood close, the scent of his cologne pulling her back to that hotel room. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, voice low. "Because you make me want to be better," he said. Their kiss was inevitable, a collision of longing and memory, but Elena pulled away, panic rising. Her secret felt heavier with every touch. Across town, Victoria watched from the shadows. She had seen Marcus at a gala, his distraction evident when Elena's name surfaced. A private investigator she hired confirmed his obsession, uncovering Elena's role in the resistance. Victoria, calculating and ambitious, saw opportunity. Marcus's wealth and status were prizes she had lost once. She wouldn't let a community activist steal them again. She began plotting, attending his events, and offering sympathy about the project's delays. Marcus, focused on Elena, barely noticed her renewed presence, but Victoria's patience was strategic. Elena lay awake that night, the kiss replaying in her mind. She wanted to tell Marcus about their children, to share the joy and burden of Ethan's protectiveness, Sophia's laughter, and Isabella's wisdom. But fear of his reaction, anger, rejection, or a legal fight, kept her silent. She had seen how wealth tilted justice. Her mother's struggles after her father left taught her that. Marcus, in his penthouse, stared at the city, resolve hardening. He would prove himself to Elena as a CEO and as the man who had held her through the dark. Neither knew their worlds were about to collide, with secrets and schemes threatening to unravel everything. The empire Marcus built felt empty without her, but fate drew them closer, toward a truth that could bind or break them. The community center buzzed with defiance, a stark contrast to the polished boardrooms Marcus Kane usually commanded. Elena Voss stood at the forefront, her voice steady as she rallied her neighbors against Kane Enterprises' redevelopment plan. The proposed luxury condos threatened to displace families who had called the neighborhood home for generations. Elena's hybrid model, blending affordable housing with modern development, had gained traction, and her passion made her a formidable leader. She wore a simple sweater, her dark hair pulled back, but her presence was magnetic. Marcus watched from the back, torn between admiration and frustration. Finding her, after 5 years, felt like a miracle, yet her opposition to his project and her guarded silence about their past stung deeply. The meeting was heated. Residents shared stories of roots too deep to uproot, their voices cracking with fear and resolve. Elena presented data, relocation costs, school disruptions, and the loss of community ties. Marcus countered with promises of jobs and infrastructure, but her challenge was, what good is progress if it erases homes, hit hard? His childhood evictions flashed through his mind, a reminder of why he built his empire, to never feel powerless again. Yet, Elena's words forced him to question his vision. Their eyes met across the room, charged with unspoken history. She looked away, her jaw tight, hiding a secret that weighed heavier each day. Elena's fear was rooted in her past. Her father's abandonment, choosing wealth over family, had left scars. Marcus embodied that threat with his tailored suit and vast resources. Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella, her triplets, his children, were her world. Telling him risked a custody battle she couldn't afford, especially given his wealth. She had seen how money tilted justice. Her mother's struggles taught her that lesson. Yet, his presence at community events, his genuine efforts to listen, chipped away at her defenses. He wasn't just a CEO here, but a man seeking something more profound. Marcus threw himself into the neighborhood, determined to bridge the gap. He funded repairs at the community center, worked alongside residents to paint walls, and listened to their concerns. His team warned that concessions would cut profits, but he insisted on revising plans to include affordable units, echoing Elena's ideas. He wasn't just trying to save the project, he wanted her trust. At a cleanup event, he handed her a paint roller, their fingers brushing. The spark was instant, reigniting memories of their night together. "You're not what I expected," she admitted, her voice soft. "I'm trying to be more," he replied, his blue eyes intense. Their interactions grew charged. A late-night meeting at the community center found them alone, poring over blueprints. The air crackled as their hands touched, his cologne pulling her back to the hotel suite. "Why do you keep showing up?" she asked, her guard slipping. "Because you make me question everything," he said. Their kiss was sudden, a collision of longing and unresolved pain. Elena's heart raced. His touch was familiar yet dangerous. She pulled back, panic rising. "I can't," she whispered, fleeing into the night. The secret of their children loomed, a truth she wasn't ready to share. Marcus stood frozen, her retreat echoing the morning she vanished 5 years ago. He resolved to keep pushing, attending every meeting, and helping with small tasks like fixing playground equipment. Residents noticed his shift. Some warmed to him, others remained wary. Ruby, Elena's neighbor, saw through his efforts. "That man's not just here for business," she told Elena on her balcony, surrounded by thriving plants. "He's here for you." Elena shook her head, citing his power as a threat. But Ruby's words lingered. Marcus's actions, hiring local contractors, funding scholarships, felt sincere, challenging her assumptions. Elena's life revolved around her children. Protective and curious, Ethan asked about their father, his blue eyes mirroring Marcus's. Sophia's laughter filled their small apartment, while Isabella's quiet observations held uncanny wisdom. Elena told them carefully crafted stories. Their father was a good man, separated by circumstance. But the redevelopment fight consumed her. She organized protests, spoke at city council meetings, and became the neighborhood's voice. Her modest income stretched thin, with bills and daycare costs looming. The community rallied, with Ruby watching the kids during late meetings, but Elena felt the strain. Across town, Victoria watched Marcus's growing obsession with Elena. She had re-entered his orbit at a gala, offering sympathy about project delays. Her polished beauty and calculated charm masked her motives, reclaiming Marcus's wealth and status. A private investigator she hired revealed Elena's role as an activist and single mother, though not the whole truth. Victoria saw an opportunity to exploit Marcus's distraction, attending his events and planting subtle doubts about Elena's motives. "She's using the community to gain attention," she suggested over drinks, "and her tone is sympathetic." Marcus brushed it off, but her presence lingered like a storm cloud. Elena lay awake, the kiss replaying in her mind. She wanted to trust Marcus and share the truth about Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella. Their features, his eyes, his smile, were undeniable, but fear held her back. What if he used his wealth to take them? Her mother's warnings about powerful men echoed. She focused on the fight, drafting proposals late into the night, her children's laughter grounding her. Ethan defended his sisters from bullies at school. Sophia led games with infectious joy, and Isabella watched the world with quiet insight. They were her strength, but also her vulnerability. In his penthouse, Marcus stared at revised plans incorporating Elena's ideas. He saw her as an adversary and a partner in redefining progress. His childhood, marked by evictions and hunger, made her arguments resonate. He began questioning his empire's purpose. Was it power, or could it be something more? He attended another community event, helping kids paint a mural. Elena watched from a distance, her heart torn. His efforts felt genuine, but the risk of revealing her secret was too significant. Victoria's schemes deepened. She fed Marcus's team misinformation, framing Elena as manipulative to delay the project. She planned to attend the next community event, ready to charm residents while sowing discord. Elena, unaware, prepared for a major council meeting, and her speech was a plea to save their homes. The collision of their worlds was imminent. Marcus's pursuit, Elena's secret, and Victoria's machinations converging. Fate had reunited them, but the truth about their children and the battle for the neighborhood threatened to tear them apart. The walls Elena built to protect her family were cracking, and Marcus's empire felt emptier than ever. Marcus Kane stood at the edge of the community center, his tailored suit starkly out of place among the chipped paint and creaking floorboards. The air buzzed with the chatter of residents, their voices weaving a tapestry of hope and resilience. He had come to repair the center's leaking roof, an olive branch to the community he'd nearly displaced with his redevelopment plans. Elena Voss, her auburn hair tied back in a practical bun, moved through the crowd, organizing volunteers with a quiet authority that stirred something deep in Marcus's chest. He remembered her fire from that stormy night 5 years ago, the night that changed everything, though she still guarded a secret he couldn't yet name. The community center, a squat brick building in the heart of the working-class neighborhood, was more than a structure. It was a lifeline, where kids did homework, where elders shared stories, where Elena had found a home after fleeing the polished cruelty of her old life. Marcus watched her direct a group of teenagers hauling paint cans, her laughter cutting through the hum of activity. He hadn't planned to stay long, but her presence anchored him. Their confrontation at the redevelopment meeting had been electric, her defiance clashing with his ambition. Yet, beneath the argument, he'd felt the pull of that night, the unspoken connection that refused to fade. He approached, carrying a toolbox as an excuse. Elena's eyes flicked to him, wary but curious, her guard as palpable as the summer heat. "You're here again," she said, her tone clipped. "Don't you have skyscrapers to build?" Marcus grinned, setting the toolbox down. "Skyscrapers can wait. This roof can't." She raised an eyebrow, but a faint smile betrayed her. They worked side by side, hammering nails and patching leaks, their movements syncing in an almost too natural rhythm. The residents noticed, exchanging knowing glances. Ruby, the widowed neighbor who'd become Elena's rock, nudged her with a sly whisper. "He's trying, girl, let him." As days turned into weeks, Marcus became a fixture in the community. He traded his suits for jeans, his boardroom for the center's folding chairs. He listened to stories of families scraping by, dreams deferred, and triumphs earned through grit. He funded repairs, brought in contractors, and even joined a cooking class led by Ruby, who teased him mercilessly when he burned the cornbread. Elena watched this transformation, her heart caught between admiration and fear. She remembered his tenderness that night at the Imperial Grand, how he'd held her, as if she were the only thing keeping him afloat. But she also remembered her father's abandonment, the sting of betrayal from those with power. Marcus was a millionaire who could reshape cities with a signature. Could she trust him with her heart, let alone her children? One evening, after a long day of painting the center's walls, they found themselves alone in the dimly lit main hall. The air was thick with the scent of fresh paint and possibility. Marcus leaned against a ladder, his blue eyes catching the flicker of a bare bulb. "You're different here," Elena said, breaking the silence less like a CEO. Marcus chuckled, but his gaze was serious. "This place, it reminds me of where I came from. I didn't always have penthouses. I had nothing once." Elena's breath caught. She'd assumed he was born into wealth, but his words cracked open a new perspective. She wanted to ask more, to peel back the layers of this man who haunted her dreams, but fear held her back. The secret of Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella weighed like a stone in her chest. Their conversation turned to the redevelopment. Marcus admitted his initial plan was cold, driven by profit. But seeing the community and meeting people like Ruby changed him. He said, "I'm revising the project, on a minor scale, preserving the neighborhood." Elena's eyes widened. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're right," he replied. "Progress shouldn't erase people." Their voices grew heated, not in anger but in passion, pushing the other to see and feel more. They stood close now, the space between them charged. Marcus reached out, brushing a streak of paint from her cheek. Her skin burned under his touch, and before she could think, she leaned in. Their lips met, fierce and hungry, a collision of longing and memory. The kiss was a storm, pulling them back to that night 5 years ago, when the world had felt like theirs alone. But as they pulled apart, Elena's heart raced with panic. She couldn't let this happen, not yet. Not when Ethan's eyes mirrored Marcus's, when Sophia's laugh echoed his, when Isabella's quiet wisdom felt like a piece of him. She stepped back, her voice trembling. "We can't, Marcus, not like this." He looked at her, confusion and hurt flashing across his face. "Why? What are you hiding?" he asked. Elena shook her head, tears threatening to spill. She fled the center, leaving him standing in the half-painted hall, the weight of her secret threatening to crush her. Back at her apartment, Elena paced, the walls closing in. Ruby knocked, her face etched with concern. "You can't keep running, child," she said. "He's not your father. He's trying to be better." Elena sank onto the couch, her hands covering her face. "I'm scared, Ruby. If he knows about the kids, he could take them. He's got money, power." Ruby took her hand. "You're strong, Elena. You've built a life from nothing. Trust yourself. Trust him a little." Elena nodded, but doubt gnawed at her. She saw her children sleeping in the next room, their faces peaceful. Ethan with his father's eyes, Sophia with her boundless joy, Isabella with her quiet strength. She couldn't lose them. Meanwhile, Marcus sat in his sleek office, the city skyline mocking his restlessness. He couldn't shake the kiss, the way Elena's walls had crumbled for a moment before rising again. He wanted her, wanted the life they could build, but something held her back, and he needed to know what. Unbeknownst to him, Victoria, his ex, watched from the shadows. She'd seen him and how he looked at Elena at the community center. Jealousy twisted her heart. She'd lost Marcus once, but she wouldn't again. She began to dig, hiring a private investigator to follow Elena, sensing an opportunity to exploit whatever secret kept her so guarded. Marcus and Elena's interactions grew strained, but undeniable as the community center neared completion. They stole glances, their hands brushing as they passed tools. Each moment was a spark, threatening to ignite. Elena wrestled with her heart, torn between love and fear, unaware of the truth. Marcus felt the pull of a future he couldn't yet define. The community watched, hopeful but cautious, knowing whatever came next would test them all. The fire between Marcus and Elena burned brighter, but secrets and shadows loomed, ready to challenge the fragile trust they'd begun to build. The triumph of the fashion show lingered like a sweet aftertaste, but victory in our world was fleeting. Damien's sabotage attempt had been thwarted, and with Julian Sterling's defection, the cracks in his facade were widening. Yet, as we celebrated the influx of investments pouring into Voss Couture, a new storm brewed on the horizon. It arrived in the form of a frantic phone call late one evening, shattering the fragile peace we had begun to rebuild. I was in the studio with Lila, reviewing fabric samples under the warm glow of the lamps, when her phone rang. The number was unknown, but something in Lila's expression as she answered told me this was no ordinary call. "Hello?" Her voice was cautious, laced with the wariness that had become second nature. On the other end, a woman's voice broke through, trembling and urgent. "Lila, this is Nadia. Nadia Voss. No, Blackwood. I need help. Please." Lila's face drained of color. "Nadia? Damien's. What happened? Are you okay?" I leaned in, piecing together the fragments. Nadia was Damien's current partner, the woman who had stepped into the void Lila left behind. Rumors had swirled about her pregnancy, but we had no direct contact until now. Nadia's words tumbled out in a rush. "He pushed me. I was defending you, telling him to leave you alone, and he just lost it. I'm in the hospital. The baby." Lila gripped the phone tighter. "Oh God, is the baby all right? Where are you?" "St. Mary's Hospital. The baby's coming early, but they say it'll be fine." "But Damien, he's furious. I can't go back." "We'll be there," Lila promised, already motioning for me to grab the keys. "Hang on, Nadia." We raced to the hospital, the city lights blurring past us. On the way, Lila told me what little she knew about Nadia. She was younger, perhaps in her late 20s, with a background not unlike Lila's own. Nadia had grown up in a modest family, ambitious and bright, but isolated after a series of personal setbacks, a failed business venture, and the loss of close friends to distance and time. That's when Damien entered her life, charming and attentive, filling the voids with promises of security and love. It was the same playbook he had used on Lila: gradual isolation, control masked as protection. By the time we arrived, Nadia was in labor. We waited in the sterile hallway, the beeps of monitors echoing our anxiety. Hours later, a nurse emerged with good news: a healthy baby boy named Elias. Nadia was exhausted but stable, a bruise blooming on her arm where Damien had grabbed her before the push. We entered the room quietly. Nadia lay propped up in bed, her dark hair matted with sweat, holding her newborn with joy and fear. "Thank you for coming," she whispered. "I didn't know who else to call." Lila sat beside her, taking her hand. "Tell us everything." Nadia's story poured out like a dam breaking. It began innocently enough, coffee dates turning into a whirlwind romance. Damien showered her with gifts and whisked her away to exotic locales. But soon, the red flags appeared. He discouraged her from seeing old friends, claiming they were jealous of their happiness. He managed her finances, insisting it was for their future. When she discovered she was pregnant, his control intensified. Any mention of Lila or the ongoing legal battles triggered rage. She confronted him tonight after seeing a news clip about the fashion show. "You can't keep hurting her," Nadia had said. "She's the mother of your child?" No, wait, that wasn't right. Lila and Damien had no children, but the parallel abuses blurred in Nadia's mind. "He screamed that I was betraying him," Nadia continued, tears streaming. "Then he shoved me down the stairs. I barely caught the railing. The police had been called, but Damien had fled before they arrived." Nadia refused to press charges immediately, terrified of retaliation. But Lila convinced her otherwise. "You have to, for Elias's sake. We'll protect you." With Victoria's help, we arranged for Nadia to stay at a safe house affiliated with a women's shelter. Lila covered the costs from the inheritance, ensuring round-the-clock security. As Nadia recovered, she opened up more about the abuse. It mirrored Lila's experience eerily. The gaslighting, the financial stranglehold, the emotional manipulation. Damien had even used phrases like, "You're nothing without me," to erode her self-worth. Nadia's testimony became a turning point. Victoria filed it as evidence in the ongoing lawsuits, detailing the patterns of abuse. It wasn't just Lila anymore. There was a trail of victims. Nadia agreed to testify, her voice gaining strength with each retelling. In court, she stood tall, describing the isolation that started with subtle suggestions and escalated to outright bans on social interactions. "He made me cut ties with my family," she said. "I was alone, except for him." The impact rippled through Damien's family. Eloine Blackwood, his mother, a formidable woman who had long turned a blind eye to her son's flaws, finally acted. Upon hearing Nadia's account and seeing photos of the bruises, she cut off his financial support. She declared no more allowances from the family trust in a private letter leaked to the press. "You've shamed us enough." Sable, Damien's sister, went public with her criticism. In a scathing interview with a major news outlet, she denounced him. "I've seen the signs for years," she admitted, "but family loyalty blinded me. No more." She pledged donations to abuse survivor organizations, further tarnishing the Blackwood name. Damien's empire began to crumble. Business partners distanced themselves, and stocks in his companies dipped. He lashed out in interviews, calling the accusations fabrications by bitter exes, but the tide had turned. Amid this chaos, Lila found a new purpose in helping Nadia. She visited daily, bringing baby supplies and sharing stories about her escape. It was therapeutic for both watching Elias's tiny fingers curl around hers. Lila spoke of building a support network. "We're not alone anymore." Nadia's backstory added layers to the narrative. She had been a social worker before meeting Damien, ironically helping victims of domestic violence. Her own isolation stemmed from burnout and a relocation that severed ties. Damien preyed on that vulnerability, much like he had with Lila's post-divorce fragility. As the days passed, Nadia's testimony led to an arrest warrant for Damien on assault charges. He went underground briefly, but the pressure mounted. Then, the cliffhanger arrived. A secretive email from Kieran, Damien's younger brother. "I need to meet," it read. "I have information that could end this for good." Lila and I stared at the screen, hearts pounding. Kieran had always been the quiet one, overshadowed by Damien's dominance. What secrets did he hold? We arranged a discreet meeting, unsure if it was an ally or a trap. The web of betrayal was tightening, and with Nadia's courage lighting the way, we braced for the revelations ahead. In the quiet moments, Lila reflected on the parallels. Helping Nadia is like saving a part of myself, she confided. And with the family turning, justice is finally within reach. The drama escalated as Sable's public stance drew media frenzy, protesters gathering outside Blackwood offices. Elowen's financial cutoff left Damien scrambling, his luxurious lifestyle unraveling. Nadia, safe with Elias, began rebuilding, enrolling in online courses with Lila's encouragement. Yet, Damien's threats persisted in anonymous calls, warning Nadia to recant. We traced them, bolstering the case. As Kieran's meeting loomed, the air thickened with anticipation. What would the brother reveal? The new victim's emergence had shifted the battle, exposing the depths of Damien's depravity and forging unlikely bonds in the fight for truth. Kieran's email hung over us like a storm cloud, its cryptic promise of information both a beacon of hope and a potential trap. Lila and I arranged to meet him at a secluded cafe on the outskirts of town, far from prying eyes. The weight of Nadia's testimony and the Blackwood family's unraveling added urgency to every step. Damien's empire was crumbling, but a cornered predator is always the most dangerous. The cafe was dimly lit, with worn wooden tables and the faint hum of jazz in the background. Kieran arrived alone, his lanky frame hunched as if carrying the burdens of his family's sins. His eyes, like Damien's yet softer, darted nervously as he sat across from us. "Thanks for meeting me," he said, voice low. "I know this is risky." Lila leaned forward, her expression guarded. "Why now, Kieran? You've been silent all this time." He sighed, running a hand through his dark hair. "I've been complicit too long. Growing up, I saw things I tried to ignore. But Nadia's story, your fight, it woke me up." Kieran revealed a flash drive, its surface scratched from being hidden away. "This has everything," he said. "Financial records, emails, and even voice memos from our father, Roderick. He taught Damien how to manipulate and control people like pawns. It started with our mother, Elowen." His backstory unfolded in halting sentences. As a child, Kieran had witnessed Roderick's domineering hold over Elowen, subtle but relentless. She was never struck, but her spirit was caged, her decisions overridden. Damien idolized it, mimicking the tactics. By 16, he was helping Roderick bribe officials to secure land deals, learning to exploit weaknesses. Younger and quieter, Kieran was dismissed as weak and left to observe the destruction. "I hated it," he admitted, "but I stayed loyal until now." Lila took the flash drive, her fingers trembling slightly. "This could end him," she said. "But why betray your brother?" Kieran met her gaze. "Because he's not my brother anymore. He's a monster, and I'm done protecting him." The drive contained damning evidence. Spreadsheets detailing bribes to city planners, recordings of Roderick instructing Damien on coercive tactics, and emails where Damien boasted about ruining Voss Couture to keep Lila dependent. One memo even outlined his plan to sabotage the historic neighborhood for profit. It was a goldmine for Victoria's legal arsenal, but the meeting wasn't without danger. As we left the cafe, Lila's phone buzzed with a chilling voicemail from Damien. "I know you're digging, Lila. Stop, or I'll destroy everything you love." His voice was calm, almost amused, sending shivers down my spine. We tightened security around the estate, but the threat lingered. Lila threw herself into action, channeling her fear into purpose. She joined a therapy group for abuse survivors, a step I'd never expected. Sitting in a circle of women with stories mirroring her own, she shared fragments of her marriage. "I blamed myself for so long," she confessed in one session. "But seeing Nadia's strength, I realize I can forgive myself too." The therapy gave her clarity, but the legal battle intensified. The hearing for the historic neighborhood's fate was pushed forward, orchestrated by Roderick, despite his recent stroke. His influence lingered, pulling strings through loyal associates. Victoria prepared relentlessly, integrating Kieran's evidence with Nadia's testimony and Isolde's dossier. The case was now a sprawling web, exposing decades of Blackwood corruption. At the estate, I noticed a shift in Lila. She was no longer just surviving, she was strategizing. "The Lara," she said one evening, sorting through fabric swatches, "this isn't just about me anymore. It's about stopping a cycle." I nodded, grappling with my own guilt. Years ago, Damien had used me to undermine Voss Couture, and the shame still stung. Helping Lila now was my redemption. We worked late, planning a community outreach event to rally support for the neighborhood, inviting survivors like Nadia to speak. Meanwhile, Kieran's defection sent shockwaves through the Blackwood family. Sable, already vocal, doubled down, leaking more documents to the press. Elowen, once complicit, began cooperating with investigators, perhaps to salvage her reputation. The media frenzy grew, with headlines branding Damien a pariah. His companies faced audits and investors pulled out, citing ethical concerns. But Damien struck back. A late-night call to Nadia warned her to retract her testimony, or Elias would pay. She refused, bolstered by Lila's support and safe-house protection. The police traced the call, but Damien used burner phones, staying one step ahead. Kieran's evidence bolstered our case, but came at a personal cost. He confided his internal struggle, loyalty to family versus justice. I grew up idolizing Damien, he admitted, but whenever I saw him hurt someone, it chipped away at me. Nadia's story was the last straw. Victoria filed the new evidence, pushing for an expedited hearing. The neighborhood case was now tied to broader charges against Damien: fraud, bribery, and assault. His electronic monitoring, imposed after Nadia's incident, restricted his movements, but he remained a ghost, slipping through cracks. Lila's therapy group became a sanctuary. In one session, a woman shared a story of reclaiming her life after years of control. Lila listened, tears in her eyes, then spoke. "I'm building something new, not just for me, but for others like us." It was a vow, one I saw her live out daily. As the hearing approached, we uncovered another layer of betrayal. Kieran's files revealed Roderick's past abuse of Elowen, a secret buried by family wealth. It explained her initial silence, her complicity. Kieran had found her old journal, hidden in their mansion, detailing the manipulation. It was a bombshell, painting Damien as a product of a toxic legacy. The night before the hearing, Lila sat in the studio, sketching a new dress inspired by the group's stories. "It's about resilience," she said. "Each stitch is a step forward." But Damien's shadow loomed. Another voicemail arrived, this time for me. "Ilara, you traitor. You'll regret siding with her." The call ended abruptly, but the threat was clear. We alerted the police, who increased patrols around the estate. Kieran's meeting had changed everything, exposing the rot at the Blackwood's core. Yet, as we prepared for the hearing, a sense of unease settled in. Damien was desperate, and desperation bred chaos. Lila and I shared a look, an unspoken understanding passing between us. The fight for the neighborhood was more than a legal battle. It was a stand against a legacy of control. As we finalized our strategy, Nadia's voice echoed in my mind, her courage a reminder of what was at stake. Kieran's betrayal had tipped the scales, but the cost was yet to be seen. The hearing loomed, a crucible where truth would face power, and we braced for the storm Damien would unleash. The courtroom's heavy air pressed against Elena Voss as she sat, her hands gripping the table's edge, her eyes fixed on the judge's stern face. The custody battle for Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella had already carved deep wounds, and now a new shadow loomed. Victoria, Marcus Kane's ex-lover, stepped into the witness stand, her sleek blonde hair and tailored dress radiating calculated poise. Elena's stomach churned. She'd never met Victoria, but the woman's presence felt like a storm cloud, her gaze sharp with intent. Marcus, seated across the room, stiffened, his green eyes narrowing as Victoria began to speak, her voice smooth as silk but laced with venom. Victoria's testimony was a master class in manipulation. She painted Elena as unstable, a woman who'd hidden 3 children from their father out of spite, not fear. She said Ms. Voss kept Marcus from his children for 5 years, her tone dripping with feigned concern. She's proven she can't be trusted to prioritize their well-being. Elena's life in a low-income neighborhood only underscores her inability to provide. Elena's lawyer, Clara, objected, but the judge allowed the testimony, her pen scratching notes. Victoria's words cut deep, framing Elena's choices as reckless, her poverty as failure. The courtroom murmurs grew, and Elena felt the weight of judgment from strangers, her cheeks burning. Marcus listened, his jaw tight. Victoria had approached him days earlier, offering support, Her apologies for past betrayals seemed sincere. He'd let her back into his orbit, desperate for an ally amid the chaos of discovering his children. Now, her words twisted reality, and doubt crept into his mind. Had he misjudged Elena so completely? Yet, as Victoria spoke, her polished demeanor felt too perfect, her motives too convenient. He glanced at Elena, her face pale but defiant, and something in him stirred. A flicker of the connection from that stormy night 5 years ago. Elena took the stand next, her voice trembling but resolute. "I didn't hide my children to hurt Marcus," she said. "I was protecting them. My father abandoned us for a wealthier life. I couldn't risk losing them to someone I didn't know, someone with the power to take them." Her eyes met Marcus's, pleading for understanding, but his expression was unreadable. Clara presented letters from the community, Ruby, neighbors, teachers, vouching for Elena's devotion, but Victoria's testimony lingered, a poison seeping into the judge's deliberations. The hearing ended with a ruling. Marcus's visitation time increased to 2 weekends a month, a small victory for him that felt like a crushing loss to Elena. Outside the courtroom, Elena's world began to crumble. Her freelance design clients, already dwindling, vanished entirely, spooked by the public drama. Bills piled higher, and the threat of eviction loomed over her small apartment. She sat with Ruby one evening, her hands shaking as she sorted through overdue notices. "You're stronger than this, child," Ruby said, her voice firm. But Elena felt anything but strong. Ethan's outbursts at school worsened, Sophia's drawings grew darker, and Isabella's quiet stares held a sadness that broke Elena's heart. The children missed their routine, community, and mother's unwavering presence. But the court's decision pulled them into Marcus's world, a place of wealth but unfamiliarity. Marcus, meanwhile, struggled with his new role. During his weekends with the children, he tried to connect, taking them to museums, cooking meals in his sprawling penthouse. But the gap of 5 years was palpable. Ethan resisted, his loyalty to Elena fierce. Sophia tried to please, her chatter masking confusion. Isabella observed, her silence a wall Marcus couldn't breach. Yet their faces, Ethan's green eyes, Sophia's radiant smile, Isabella's quiet wisdom, were undeniable pieces of him. He wanted to be their father, not just a visitor. But Victoria's words echoed, fueling his anger toward Elena. Why had she kept them from him? Was she truly unfit, as Victoria claimed? Victoria seized her moment. She visited Marcus's office, and her concern was a carefully crafted mask. "You deserve better, Marcus," she said, her hand brushing his arm. "Those children need stability, not a mother who drags them through poverty." Marcus pulled away, his instincts screaming that something was off. Victoria's return had been too timely, and her words aligned with his fears. He began questioning her, but she deflected, offering half-truths about Elena's past, hinting at instability without evidence. Her goal was clear, to widen the rift between Marcus and Elena, positioning herself as the solution to his fractured life. Elena's breaking point came one night when Ethan woke from a nightmare, sobbing for her while at Marcus's. She drove to his penthouse, her heart pounding, and found Marcus comforting Ethan, his face etched with worry. The sight softened her, but fear surged as she saw Victoria lingering nearby, her smile too smug. Elena took Ethan home, her resolve hardening. She couldn't lose her children, not to Marcus's wealth or Victoria's schemes. She poured her energy into fighting back, taking on extra design work despite exhaustion, and her community rallied to help. Ruby organized fundraisers, neighbors babysat, and a local lawyer offered pro bono advice, but the odds felt insurmountable. Marcus's doubts grew. He hired a private investigator to probe Victoria's motives, not to track Elena. The findings were damning. Victoria had been meeting with a rival developer, leaking details of Marcus's revised project to undermine him. Her testimony was a calculated move, not to help him, but to destabilize his life, hoping to reclaim her place. Marcus confronted her, his voice cold. "You use my children to hurt Elena," he said. "Get out of my life." Victoria's mask slipped, her anger flaring, but she left, her plans unraveling. The revelation shook Marcus. He saw Elena's fear in a new light, not as betrayal, but as a mother's desperate love. He looked at Ethan's sketchbook, Sophia's drawings, and Isabella's poems and felt the weight of his choices. The children's tears during visits, their longing for Elena, echoed his emptiness. The courtroom battle had become a war of attrition, hurting everyone. As the next hearing approached, Marcus stood at a crossroads. He wanted his children, but at what cost? Elena, fighting to keep her family intact, faced the same question. Victoria's manipulation had pushed them to the brink, but the truth, raw and unyielding, might yet forge a path forward. The city skyline glittered through Marcus Kane's penthouse window, a cold constellation of ambition that mocked the turmoil within him. He sat alone, Ethan's sketchbook on his desk, the boy's pencil drawings of superheroes and family picnics blurring through unshed tears. Victoria's betrayal had gutted him. He'd overheard her on a call, plotting to sabotage Elena Voss and manipulate him for her own gain, money, status, a way back into his life. Cutting her out had been swift, but the damage lingered. Marcus saw now how her lies had fueled his anger toward Elena, pushing him to fight for custody with a ferocity that felt wrong. The children's faces, Ethan's defiance, Sophia's forced cheer, Isabella's quiet pain, haunted him. He wanted to be their father, but the legal battle tore them apart. Across town, Elena sat in her cramped apartment, the dim light casting shadows on the walls, adorned with her children's artwork. Bills were stacked on the table, unpaid despite her relentless freelance work. The custody fight had drained her, emotionally and financially. She'd lost more clients, her reputation tarnished by the public drama Victoria had amplified. At night, she lay awake, replaying Marcus's face in the courtroom, angry, hurt, but also vulnerable. She saw glimpses of the man from that stormy night 5 years ago, the one who'd held her like she was his anchor, but fear still gripped her. His wealth, his power, could take her children. Yet, the children's longing for him during his visits chipped away at her resolve. They needed a father, and she couldn't deny the bond forming. Marcus's epiphany came during a sleepless night. He wandered to the guest room where the children stayed during visits, their small belongings, a stuffed bear, a half-finished puzzle, scattered like pieces of a life he'd missed. He'd been so focused on claiming his rights that he hadn't seen the cost. Ethan's angry outbursts, Sophia's anxious chatter, Isabella's watchful silence, they weren't just resisting him, they were grieving the upheaval. He thought of his childhood, scraping by in a neighborhood like Elena's, his mother's love the only constant. Money hadn't saved him then, love had. He realized Elena's fear wasn't betrayal but survival, rooted in her scars. He'd been wrong to let Victoria's lies drive him. Elena's collapse was quieter but no less profound. She sat with Ruby one evening, her hands trembling as she confessed her despair. "I'm losing everything, Ruby, my kids, my work, myself." Ruby, her eyes warm with wisdom, squeezed her hand. "You're not lost, Elena. You're fighting for love. That's not a weakness." But Elena felt broken. Ethan's teacher had called about another fight at school. Sophia's nightmares had returned. Isabella's silence grew heavier. The children were caught in a war neither parent wanted, their small lives stretched between two worlds. Elena looked at a photo of them, their faces like Marcus's, and wondered if her fear had hurt them more than protected them. Their communication had dwindled to terse messages about visitation schedules, each word a careful step around the minefield of their emotions. But the children became unwitting bridges. During a visit, Sophia slipped a drawing into Marcus's hand, a family of 5 standing together under a bright sun. "Is this us?" Marcus asked, his voice catching. Sophia nodded, shy but hopeful. Ethan, usually guarded, muttered about missing his mom's pancakes, a small crack in his armor. Isabella left a poem on Marcus's table, its lines about a tree with 2 strong roots, mother and father, stirring something profound in him. These fragments of connection pushed Marcus to act. He sent Elena a message, his words careful but raw. "Can we talk? Not as enemies, for them." Elena stared at the text, her heart racing. She wanted to trust him, to believe in the man who'd rebuilt the community center and knelt to tie Sophia's shoe during a visit. But trust was fragile, shattered by her past and their present. She agreed to meet, choosing the community center, a neutral ground where their story had reignited. They sat in the now-finished hall, its walls vibrant with fresh paint and children's murals. The silence between them was heavy, but the space felt alive with possibility. "I was wrong," Marcus began, his voice low. "Victoria used me, and I let her poison my view of you. I'm sorry." Elena's breath caught, her eyes searching his. She saw sincerity but also pain, the same pain she carried. "I was scared, Marcus," she said. "I thought you'd take them, like my father took himself from us. I didn't know how to trust you." They spoke of their pasts, Marcus's rise from poverty, Elena's fear of abandonment, each story a thread weaving them closer. The children's needs loomed large. "They're hurting," Elena said, her voice breaking. "Ethan's angry, Sophia's scared. Isabella's carrying too much." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "I see it too. I don't want to fight you anymore." Their conversation was interrupted by a call from Ethan's school. He'd gotten into another scuffle, defending his mother's name. They rushed to pick him up, their shared worry a fragile truce. Ethan ran to Elena at the school, but his eyes lingered on Marcus, a mix of resentment and curiosity. Marcus knelt, his voice gentle. "I'm not here to take you from your mom, Ethan. I want to be your dad, but we'll figure it out together." Ethan didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed slightly, a small victory. They sat with the children at the community center, listening to their fears. Sophia climbed into Marcus's lap, softening Elena's heart. Isabella spoke quietly, asking if they could all stop fighting. Marcus and Elena exchanged a look, an unspoken agreement forming. They didn't have all the answers, but the children's voices cut through the anger and fear. Marcus canceled a meeting with his lawyers, a decision that felt like shedding a weight. Exhausted but resolute, Elena began to see Marcus not as a threat, but as a partner in their children's future. The legal battle loomed, but its edges softened. Marcus's wealth, once a weapon, became a tool. He offered to fund Elena's design studio, not as charity, but as an investment in her talent. Elena hesitated, her pride warring with practicality, but the children's needs tipped the scales. They were far from healed, their trust fragile, but the collapse of their defenses opened a path. With their drawings, words, and quiet hopes, the children held them together, pushing Marcus and Elena toward a reckoning not of anger, but of possibility. The hospital waiting room was a sterile cage of fluorescent lights and muted anxiety, its beige walls closing in on Elena Voss and Marcus Kane. They sat side by side, shoulders brushing, their eyes fixed on the double doors leading to the pediatric ward. Isabella, their quiet, perceptive daughter, had been rushed to the emergency room with a high fever and labored breathing. Acute pneumonia, the doctor said. The news had shattered the fragile truce they'd forged, pulling them from their separate worlds into a shared nightmare. Ethan and Sophia huddled nearby, cared for by Ruby, their small faces pale with worry. The crisis stripped away the armor of their custody battle, leaving only raw fear and a desperate need to save their child. Elena's hands trembled, clutching a tissue shredded by nervous fingers. She hadn't slept, her mind replaying every moment of Isabella's recent silence, her slight cough dismissed as a cold. Guilt gnawed at her. She'd been so consumed by the legal fight, bills, and survival that she'd missed the signs. Marcus, usually composed, was unraveling. His tie hung loose, his green eyes red-rimmed from pacing the hospital corridors. He'd called in specialists, leveraging his wealth to ensure Isabella had the best care. But money felt useless against the fragility of her small body. They hadn't spoken much since arriving, but their proximity was a lifeline, their shared terror a silent bond. The doctor emerged, her expression cautiously optimistic. "Isabella's responding to treatment," she said. "She's stable, but we'll keep her for observation." Relief washed over them, though fear lingered. They were allowed to see her, and the sight of Isabella in the hospital bed, tubes snaking from her arm, broke something in both of them. Her eyes, so like Marcus's, fluttered open, and she managed a weak smile. "Mom, Dad," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You're both here." The word dad from her lips hit Marcus like a wave, the first time she'd called him that. Elena squeezed Isabella's hand, tears falling freely. In the quiet of the hospital room, they took turns sitting by Isabella's side, reading her poems from her notebook, their voices soft to avoid waking her. Ethan and Sophia joined, curling up on a cot, their presence reminded of what was at stake. Outside, in the waiting room, they finally spoke, their voices low but urgent. "This can't keep happening," Marcus said, his hands clenched. "The fighting, the court, it's hurting them." Elena nodded, her throat tight. "I know, I was so scared of losing them, I didn't see how much this was costing us all." The confession hung between them, raw and unfiltered. They began to share their pasts, the wounds that had shaped their choices. Marcus spoke of his childhood in a crumbling tenement, his mother working double shifts, and his drive to escape poverty, fueling his empire, but leaving him empty. "I thought money would fix everything," he admitted, "but it can't buy this us, them." Elena listened, her heart softening as she saw the boy he'd been, not the CEO he'd become. She shared her own story, her father's abandonment, her mother's struggle, the fear that wealth could steal love. She said, "I kept them from you because I thought you'd take them. But I see you now, Marcus, you're not him." The hospital became their confessional, each word peeling back layers of mistrust. They admitted their love, buried but never extinguished since that night 5 years ago. "I never stopped thinking about you," Marcus said, his voice breaking. That night at the hotel, it was real. Elena's eyes met his, her own confession spilling out. "I loved you then, Marcus. I still do. But I was so afraid." Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining, a tentative bridge over years of pain. The crisis had burned away their anger, leaving only the truth. They were bound by their children and by something deeper, something worth fighting for. They agreed to family counseling, a step toward rebuilding trust. The counselor, a calm woman named Dr. Lee, met them at the hospital, observing their interactions with the children. She noted their love and differences, Elena's nurturing warmth, Marcus's structured ambition. "You both want what's best," Dr. Lee said, "but you need to align your worlds for the sake of the children." They began sessions discussing not just custody but how to co-parent, how to heal the social and emotional divides between them. Marcus admitted his wealth had blinded him to Elena's community. Elena acknowledged her fear had shut Marcus out. Isabella's recovery was slow but steady. They took turns staying overnight, sharing stories with Ethan and Sophia to keep their spirits up. Marcus brought his laptop, working from the hospital to stay close, while Elena sketched designs, her creativity rekindled by hope. The children noticed the change. Ethan's defiance softened, Sophia's laughter returned, and Isabella, even weak, smiled more. One night, as they all sat together, Sophia drew a picture of the family, now including Marcus, with a son above them all. "It's us," she said, and Marcus's throat tightened. Elena squeezed his hand, a silent promise to try. The legal battle loomed, but its urgency faded. Marcus called his lawyers, instructing them to pause the custody fight, a decision that stunned them but felt right. With Ruby's encouragement, Elena began to trust Marcus's intentions, seeing his efforts to connect with the children not as a threat, but as love. They faced challenges. Their worlds were still divided by class, by history, but the hospital had forged a new foundation. They laughed together when Sophia spilled juice on Marcus's suit, cried when Isabella took her first steps post-recovery, and argued over small things, like bedtime routines, with a warmth that felt like family. As Isabella was discharged, they left the hospital together, the children between them. The city felt different, less a battleground, more a shared space. Marcus offered to fund Elena's design studio, not as control but as a belief in her talent. She accepted, and her pride gave way to a partnership. They weren't whole yet, their scars still tender, but forgiveness had taken root. The crisis forced them to see each other, not as enemies, but as parents, lovers, and two people shaped by pain but reaching for hope. The children, their laughter echoing in the hospital parking lot, were the light guiding them forward. The community center buzzed with warmth. its freshly painted walls adorned with children's drawings and strings of white lights that glowed like stars. Elena Voss stood at the center of the room, her auburn hair loose for once, her eyes bright with a mix of nerves and joy. Marcus Kane, his usual suit traded for a simple sweater, adjusted a tablecloth nearby, his movements deliberate but softened by a smile. Today, they were marrying in the heart of the neighborhood that had shaped their journey, surrounded by the community that had held Elena through her darkest days and welcomed Marcus into its fold. Ethan, Sophia, and Isabella darted through the crowd, their laughter a melody that anchored the moment. The ceremony was simple, reflecting their shared resolve to build something real. Ruby, the neighborhood's matriarch, stood as their witness, her eyes misty as she handed them the rings. Plain silver bands, chosen for meaning over flash. The officiant, a local pastor, spoke of love forged through trials, of family as a choice as much as a bond. Elena and Marcus exchanged vows, their voices steady but thick with emotion. Elena said, "I promise to trust you," her gaze locked on Marcus, "to build with you, for our children and us." Marcus's voice cracked as he replied, "I promise to listen, stay, and make us whole." The crowd, neighbors, friends, the children, cheered, a wave of hope washing over the room. Ethan, now 8, stood tall, his green eyes mirroring Marcus's as he handed his mother a bouquet of wildflowers. Sophia twirled in her dress, her joy infectious, while Isabella, newly recovered from her illness, read a short poem about roots and wings, her voice steady with quiet pride. The children had been their bridge, reason, and now their celebration. The community center, once a battleground for their fight over redevelopment, was now a symbol of their unity, a place where Marcus had proven his heart, where Elena had found her strength. After the vows, the reception spilled into the courtyard, where tables groaned under Ruby's peach cobbler, homemade tamales, and lemonade made by the kids. Marcus danced with Sophia, her giggles echoing as he spun her. Ethan challenged him to a game of tag, a tentative trust growing with each laugh. Isabella watched, her smile soft but sure, her poem tucked into Marcus's pocket like a talisman. Elena moved through the crowd, her design sketches for the center's new art room pinned to a board, a testament to her talent and the community's faith in her. Neighbors toasted to their future, their voices a chorus of resilience. Marcus had withdrawn his custody lawsuit days after Isabella's hospital stay, a decision that stunned his lawyers but felt like freedom. He'd moved closer, trading his penthouse for a modest house in Elena's neighborhood, its porch overlooking the same streets where Ethan played soccer and Sophia chased butterflies. The move was more than logistics. It was a commitment to meet Elena and the children where they lived, to bridge the gap between his world of wealth and their world of heart. He'd revised his redevelopment project entirely, integrating affordable housing and green spaces, preserving the community's soul. The residents, once wary, now called him by his first name, a slight but profound shift. Elena, too, had grown. With Marcus's investment, offered as a partnership, not control, she'd opened a larger design studio, its doors welcoming local artists and families seeking to transform their homes. Her work flourished, her creativity fueled by stability and love. The scars of her past, the fear of abandonment, still lingered, but Marcus's presence, steady, flawed, human, eased them. They faced challenges together. Ethan's occasional defiance, Sophia's boundless energy, Isabella's quiet need for reassurance. Co-parenting wasn't seamless, but it was honest. They argued over bedtimes and homework, laughed over spilled paint during family art nights, and found a rhythm that felt like home. The class divide that had once loomed large still cast shadows. Whispers from Marcus's old circles, business associates, socialites, questioned his choice to marry down, to tether his empire to a working-class woman. Elena faced sidelong glances from former clients, who saw her as a charity case lifted by Marcus's wealth. But they countered these with action. Marcus mentored local youth, teaching them about business. Elena hired single mothers, giving them skills and purpose. Their love, forged in crisis, became a shield, proving that worth wasn't measured in dollars but in commitment. The children adapted, their worlds expanding. Ethan began to trust Marcus, asking him to coach his soccer team, a role Marcus took with earnest pride. Sophia brought joy. Her drawings now featured a family of 5, the sun above them brighter. Isabella, ever the observer, found balance, her poems reflecting hope rather than longing. They still lived with Elena most days, but Marcus's house was a second home, its walls filling with their art, their laughter. The children carried their parents' strengths, Elena's warmth and Marcus's resilience, and their love was a bridge between their differences. As the reception wound down, Elena and Marcus stole a moment alone, standing under the courtyard's lights. The night air was cool, and the hum of the community was a comforting backdrop. "We made it," Elena said, her hand in his. Marcus nodded, his eyes tracing her face. "We're not done," he said. "There'll be more fights, more fears, but we'll face them together." She smiled, leaning into him. Their kiss was a quiet vow to keep building and keep loving. The future wasn't perfect. Bills would come, doubts would creep, and the world would test them. But they had their children, their community, and each other. Marcus's empire, once his only legacy, now served a greater purpose, funding scholarships, rebuilding parks, amplifying Elena's vision. Elena's studio grew, her designs transforming not just spaces but lives. Together, they turned mistakes into foundations, their love a testament to fate's persistence. As the last guests left, Ruby raised a glass, her voice carrying over the crowd. "To Elena and Marcus," she said, "to love that fights, that heals, that stays." The cheers rose, and their new hearth burned bright at that moment, a beacon of hope in a world that had tried to break them.